or even off. And I want to welcome everyone to the 5th year of the nationally recognized award-winning Conversation Series. This program will explore the controversial subject of no contact between generations. We will offer a rabbinic perspective, not a psychological perspective, nor a clinical perspective, so please keep that in mind. I am Richard Bressler, former board chair of the Weinstein Hospice Board of Advisors, having served as marketing chair from 2012 to 2024, and also a former member of the Jewish Home Life Board of Directors. I'm a career healthcare marketer and community volunteer for the Weinstein Hospice, having graduated from Tulane and Northwestern universities. Weinstein Hospice is the palliative and end-of-life component of Jewish Home Life, an organization centered on aging, which provides care for a new age. As the only Jewish not-for-profit hospice in Georgia, we tackle issues of community concern in a series of conversations. We have completed the production of 18 successful Zoom webinars for Weinstein Hospice, all targeted at generating awareness and promoting a conversation among the 45 to 60-year-old population in northern metro Atlanta. The conversations are all available for viewing at www.weinsteinhospice.com under the Resources tab. They are also available on our YouTube channel. This one will also reside there after completion. After this one, we have one more conversation planned through May of this year. I will now introduce the two speakers. Rabbi Samantha, or Sam Treif, serves Temple Sinai community. Her rabbinic journey began immediately following her ordination from the New York campus of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. With a deep commitment to spiritual care, Rabbi Sam has completed 2 units of clinical pastoral education, one at Maine Medical Center and another at Mount Sinai Hospital. Her passion for Israel is reflected in her ongoing service on the board of the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, FIDF, Southeast Region, as well as her role as a current Amplify Israel Fellow. She's an alumna of LEAD, which is Leadership Atlanta's program for rising professionals, and serves as chair of the Jewish Abilities Atlanta, working to promote inclusion and accessibility across the Jewish community. Rabbi Sam is married to Rabbi Natan Treif, and together they are the proud parents of Rafi and Maya, and their beloved Labradoodle Huckleberry rounds out the family with his joyful presence. As a passionate participant in Atlanta's vibrant Jewish life, Rabbi Sam is inspired by the relationships she's nurturing at Temple Sinai and is excited to continue growing with this dynamic congregation. Sam enjoys working out, playing mahjong with friends, and exploring every sushi spot the city has to offer. Rabbi Sam will address no contact from the perspective of the younger generation. Rabbi Laurence Rosenthal grew up in Los Angeles, graduating from USC in Los Angeles, eventually earning a Master of Arts degree in Hebrew Letters and Rabbinic Ordination from the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in May 2008. Laurence has played a significant role in the rejuvenation and strengthening of Ahavat Ahim Synagogue by deepening the spiritual and ritual life of its congregants. Rabbi Rosenthal also engages with the greater Atlanta Jewish community through social justice initiatives and interfaith dialogue. In addition to his duties as senior rabbi, he also served as president of the Atlanta Rabbinical Association from 19 to 21 and is currently board chair for Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, inspiring faith-based organizations to take up the cause of environmental stewardship and justice. He continues to hone his skills as a musician, focusing lately on jazz guitar. He has worked hard to develop a yoga practice for health and mindfulness and is currently trying out jogging. His greatest accomplishments, however, are his marriage to Brooke, being a father to A.E., Ariella, Mayan, and Naftali, and being a roommate to the standard poodle named Jujubee. The Rosenthal family joined the Ahavat Ahim family in July of 2008. Rabbi Laurence will address no contact from the perspective of the younger generation. After the two speakers have had a chance to speak, they will address audience questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A or chat box, and we should be able to get to most of them. At the end of the program, we will draw 2 names of viewers will have a chance to have a private lunch with Rabbi Sam or Rabbi Lawrence. Unfortunately, no contact seems to be a growing phenomenon. Even Oprah addresses it. Here's a clip to get us started.
Today officially marks 1 year no contact with my parents.
I've been basically fully no contact with my parents for the last 3+ years.
We're talking about the rapidly growing epidemic of estranged children who walk away from their parents. What are they protecting themselves from?
You know what? I'm over it. I'm over the idea that parents are supposed to sit around in emotional timeout until our kids decide we're worthy again.
And when somebody new in my life finds out that I've been no contact with them, without failure, the number one thing that they tell me is, but they're still your mom.
Okay, our format today is going to be a Q&A. I'm going to ask questions, the same question of both rabbis, and each will pursue the answer from a perspective of the generation that they represent. So the first question is, from a rabbinic and pastoral perspective, how do you define responsibility when family members are estranged at the end of life? Rabbi Sam?
Hi, nice to see everyone. I apologize. I have a cold, so I'm a bit hoarse and nasal. So the question is, repeat the question one more time if you don't mind.
From a rabbinic and pastoral perspective, how do you define responsibility when family members are estranged at the end of life?
Okay, I think it's a really important and powerful question, and I really appreciate it. Our Jewish tradition really highlights this idea of balancing peace and self-protection, right? We learn in Pirkei Avot that make for yourself a teacher and acquire a friend. Our commentators note that our relationships really require intentional structure and wisdom. It's not about just blind loyalty, but it's about really creating relationships that are built on structure and were thoughtful and intentional. So we learn that if someone throughout our lives has been behaving destructively, of course we should distance ourselves from them. And of course we should create healthy boundaries. But we also have this idea of responsibility. So how do we kind of put people as moderators to help us fulfill our responsibilities, but also help us protect ourselves?
Thank you. Rabbi Lawrence?
Well, thank you. It's good to be here with everybody. Thanks for being here. And it's a special honor for me to be with Rabbi Sam on this panel. So from an adult, from like the parent's perspective, which is, I guess, where I'm coming from. But one thing that doesn't need to be noted, that this is also the same for siblings, right? So there's siblings who have no contact with each other. And there's all types of other types of relationships that could be just as painful. I think from that standpoint, like Rabbi Sam said, that there are obligations that are brought in the Torah. Of course, the most familiar one is, to honor your mother and father, and even says to fear them, right? Which we struggle with that term today. But of course, the biblical idea of fear of yirah is more of awe, right? Be in wonder of them a little bit more. Any situation where there's been abuse, physical, sexual abuse, that's a red line that is crossed. And that, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. If a parent has, or if it's gone the other way, that a child has physically or otherwise abused their parent, then no contact is completely appropriate. I think the gray area comes when you're dealing with the emotional area. And there really is emotional abuse. It's not something to pretend there isn't. But how we define those things is something that culturally changes over time. The Torah brings that up. It talks about respect. The Talmud goes even a little bit deeper. It gives more specifics. It says that you're not supposed to sit in your parents' chair. I like that one. That's a good one. Can't seem to institute that one in my house, but whatever. But when I was growing up, my grandpa had a chair. I didn't feel a threat that I couldn't sit in it, but we just didn't, right? It was his chair. He sat in that chair. Back in the old days, people had dining room chairs. In fact, I think dining room chairs for a while came with only 2 chairs, or 1 chair came with 2 arms, and the rest of them were armless. And that was purposeful, right? There were certain people who got to sit in those chairs. Also, taking care financially is something that the Talmud talks about, making sure that they have food, they have a roof over their head, and they have their provisions that they need. And that really comes into play, I think, Richard, when you're talking about end-of-life issues. right? Is a child or is a parent or a child required responsible to kind of come back into a parent's life when they're at their end of life? And again, it's tricky. I'll say it again: physical, sexual abuse, and elements of emotional abuse, no. But things less than that, right? They didn't feel supported, they felt criticized, stuff like that. That really is something that needs to have a deeper dive of a conversation. What's really important, though, to keep in mind is that every situation, I think is what Rabbi Sam was alluding to, every situation is unique. And it has to be judged on its merits. And you can't just make a blanket statement on those things, except, of course, for the categories I just brought up. I want to keep reiterating that. Physical, sexual abuse, yes, done, right? Over. But things short of that, they need to really be evaluated. And that's really where professional help, like a psychiatrist or psychologist, I think would be better prepared to do those types of things.
Okay, so how can someone maintain healthy boundaries while still acting with dignity or mercy toward an estranged relative? Let's start with Rabbi Lawrence on that one.
Again, it's very specific to each situation. Healthy boundaries, I think, need to be to protect your finances, to protect your physical and mental well-being. I also think there needs to be some expectation, some understanding of expectations and what you could reasonably what's the term I'm looking for? Reasonably expect from that individual. I think oftentimes, unfortunately, especially when we've been estranged, we're very eager to get right back into the deep, loving relationship that we imagined maybe there was once upon a time. I think you need to really temper those expectations. I think just kind of bland communication might be where you want to be in that place. If your child has stepped back into your life to help you at your end of life care, don't expect the hugs, especially if they've been gone for a long time. Don't put that on them. Instead, just ask that they be responsive to the text maybe that you sent, that a bill needs to be paid, or you need help at home and somebody needs to fix something in the house. Don't look to get a hug every single time or some other affection. Instead, temper it back and say, look, I'm just going to treat this very kind of businesslike in this beginning stages, and always keep the door open for deeper. But don't expect and don't put it on your children to give that back, because that'll lead to disappointment, frustration, and resentment, and that comes out even more. That makes it even more difficult.
Rabbi Sam?
I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was just shared, and especially want to emphasize the point that, like, we are not psychiatrists, psychologists, and so we come at this from an angle of Jewish texts as opposed to actually having practical psychotherapy skills to handle these really nuanced and complex situations. But I think it's about emphasizing and determining how to boundaries and compassion can coexist with one another. And each person is going to have a different way that they're going to be able to create a boundary, and a boundary means a different thing for every single person, right? Preserving our health and the health of our loved ones is a paramount concern, and the way that we go about doing that is going to depend on the specific situation. And we do have a moral responsibility towards that, even when it's a strained relationship. But the idea I really want to emphasize is working with a professional to analyze and unpack every single situation, to not have to handle this on your own because it's too important, too many things are at stake, and to work with someone to help you determine what healthy boundaries mean for you and how you can fulfill your obligation as a child, and also how you can protect yourself.
Okay. If a parent chooses the estrangement, what spiritual or moral obligations, if any, remain for the adult children? Rabbi Sam?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Jewish law actually makes a distinction between honoring our parents and obeying our parents. So they're two very different things, right? A child is not obligated to follow harmful demands or accept mistreatment. Um, Maimonides teaches that honoring parents involves maintaining respect in speech and behavior, even when our relationships are estranged or strained, but we're obligated not to humiliate a parent publicly or to avoid revenge or cruelty. We shouldn't take vengeance, right? The book of Leviticus talks a lot about bearing grudges and how we're not supposed to hold a grudge. Even if the parent initiated estrangement, the child's obligation is primarily about maintaining moral character, acting with dignity and acting with restraint. So how do we act with dignity despite the complex situations that we find ourselves in? We are taught to act with decency, and even when our relationships are difficult. So our obligation becomes less about closeness and more about maintaining integrity and basic respect. You can still respect someone even if you don't have a very good relationship with them, right? It's maintaining that idea of respect that ultimately gets us the conclusion that we hopefully want for our families and for ourselves.
Okay, Rabbi Lawrence?
I'll repeat the question because as I'm listening to Rabbi Sam, my mind's going in a lot of different
I
areas.
know it's really hard to
It's really
remember.
hard to, so
Yeah.
repeat the
All
question
right.
again, please.
If a parent chose the estrangement, what spiritual or moral obligations, if any, remain for the adult children?
If the parent chooses the estrangement, um,
And just what I was saying was that like even if the parent chooses estrangement, it's about integrity, right? That's the obligation. If
yeah.
that helps.
Yeah, I do think that there are responsibilities for the children to still make sure that their parent doesn't become indigent, for instance, and does what is needed if the parent has a serious health issue and there are decisions to be made that the child comes in an appropriate sort of way. But again, back to what Rabbi Sam was saying, the importance of having a professional psychologist at your side to help you unpack these things, to be protecting yourself from your own issues that may come about, and so that you don't make decisions that you end up regretting later, or hurt your parents, right? Because if you're put in that position, especially if it's at end of life, you might have control over their life and death, and so you want to make sure that you're making the decisions that are sound and meaningful and not out
Yeah.
of reach or resentment.
Rabbi Lawrence, you alluded to this earlier about the sibling. What should families consider when one sibling is carrying all the caregiving while others are absent, uninvolved, or in conflict?
So I think that unfortunately I think one of the struggles we have, especially with this sort of situation, is we don't really pivot. When we end up in an estranged relationship, I think our families do a lot of kind of head in the sand sort of thing. We don't address it. We don't come together in those situations to try to figure out what can be done and what are the correct boundaries and the obligations to each other. And we wait until there's this real flashpoint, right? A sick parent or a sick child or something like that, or a financial crisis. So I think that when it comes to and I've seen this quite a bit, a child who is now taking care of their parents and there are other siblings, but the siblings don't participate. It's really important to have, again, a therapist to talk these things through. Community really comes in. To have a community that you help to embed your parents in, that you help to, then, I would of course advocate for a synagogue community. That's what I do. And so I would really lean on that. And if I was the child who's taking care, I would lean on my synagogue community to help support me. And that could be in many different ways. There might be resources, there might be that I could partake in to help my family. There might be, one thing we have all the time, caregivers seem to go from one family to another in our Jewish community. And it's amazing how many memorials I've done after 17 years. And then I go to the next memorial, I was like, oh, you were their caregiver? Like, or I come to their house, like, you were the other person. And they said, yeah, families were friends. When so-and-so died, I was recommended to this other family. And I go, those are incredible. Those are incredible sort of resources and connections and love that could be shared. So it really becomes important to have those type of things um, to help support. Um, Putting it on your sibling who's been absent in the parent's life, and now turning to your sibling at that point and saying, "Mom and Dad are sick, and you're not helping," and it just seems to inflame the relationship even more, and it causes these terrible hostilities now between siblings and anger and resentment, and that continues unfortunately well past the death of the parent, right? Now the sibling will be like, well, I took care of mom and dad. I should get the lion's share of the estate. And it just kind of keeps going like that. So really doing your best to invite siblings to do what they can to be present for their parents. But if they can't be present for their parent, you need to look towards community or other resources that you have to help support you in taking care of your parent. Because all you're going to do is cause a bigger fissure between you and your siblings.
Okay, Rabbi Sam, anything to add on that about
I
siblings? What
yeah,
happened?
I think siblings are really, really tricky, right? And I think that our family dynamics often create roles that kind of become entrenched over time, right? Like there's the responsible sibling, or there's the mediator sibling, or there's the black sheep sibling. And the Oprah podcast that we kind of are basing this on, really talks about that crises such as illness and loss and caregiving often disrupt these patterns because the family is kind of expected to suddenly cooperate. Our Torah is all about sibling relationships and strained sibling relationships, right? We have Joseph and his brothers in the book of Genesis. Joseph was rejected and cast out by his brothers, and yet years later, a famine forces them into contact again, which is just an example of how this idea of no contact isn't actually really new and how there is opportunity to come back together. In the specific story of Joseph, it eventually leads to a moment of recognition and partial reconciliation. Um, and while this might be kind of an idealist view and maybe overly optimistic and unrealistic, um, crisis can create opportunities for new understandings in families, right? And sometimes, even though full healing might never occur, it is an opportunity when we're in crisis to kind of reevaluate and re-understand our relationships as happened in the Joseph story. Um, Relationships can shift across time and our sibling roles can change, and perhaps crisis creates new possibilities for dialogue or cooperation, even if old tensions remain and continue to exist.
Okay, I have a few more questions, but if the audience wants to go ahead and put questions in the chat box or the Q&A, we'll get to those. So, what does Jewish tradition teach about kavod, honor, dignity, when the relationship itself has been painful or fractured? Rabbi Sam?
Um, we place the utmost emphasis on kavod, on honor. The Talmud teaches that protecting human dignity is so important that it actually even overrides specific rabbinic rules and legislation. Ultimately, this value comes from the book of Genesis that says every human being is created in B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God. So this means that even painful relationships deserve restraint and dignity. We try not to humiliate or dehumanize others, even though we are in suffering and in pain ourselves. And we remember that people are more than the worst moments of their behavior, right? We always say there's this idea, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And I think that famous line from Hillel really captures the delicate balance that estranged families often must navigate, caring for our own well-being while still recognizing the humanity and dignity of others. So we should use this idea of kavod as a guiding principle. Even if we're angry at someone, we should still be able to see their humanity. Even though if they were horrible to us, how do we try to see their goodness still as a way of coping and healing and acting?
Rabbi Lawrence, different comment?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really appreciate Rabbi Sam's beautiful response. It's interesting that kavod, of course, we associate with parents, right? It's in the Ten Commandments, but it's also the same verb that talks about Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh's heart against the Israelites, that it gets heavy. And having honor for a parent, especially one that you've struggled with, their personality, whether you're estranged or not, you might have a strained relationship or a difficult relationship with them, even if you stayed, fully engaged. And so there's a balance that you need to strike, one in which you have honor, but also one that your heart doesn't become so heavy that it pulls you down. And so you have to, constantly check in with yourself about, is the honor you're giving, coming back to one of Rabbi Sam's beautiful words earlier, is it taking away your dignity, right? Are you having to kind of bite your tongue so much that you're actually bleeding, right? Because you have to really put up with insults and criticisms and things like that. And so having the right people around you, the support that you could check in with, and you could show them honor, but in a way that doesn't pull you down. That's again why I go back to the Talmud. I really loved that it gave this operational definition of kavodim, your parents, the seat, the purse, making sure that they have enough resources. And, once you fulfill those things, then you have some space to say, mom or dad, or junior, I can't do this. I can't do anymore. The best case scenario we get in is a child who continues to take money from the parents, which is a real painful dynamic. And there comes a point, and unfortunately, our society talks about it like tough love, right? You need to cut them off to teach them tough love. I don't know if that's the right model we want to be using, but it really comes to a point where the honor I'm trying to bestow upon you is what's pulling my heart down, and really understanding and having that balance.
So, what if the estranged family member has dementia and cannot fully understand the history of what led to this no contact situation?
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect everything? Rabbi Laurence?
So I smiled because so that actually happened to me. I have a grandparent who my mother's mother, who after some really painful things in my teenage years, my mother and on behalf of her children, decided to say that we were cut off from our grandparents, that they had treated us in such a way that we were not to have contact with them, and so we didn't have contact with them for a long time. My grandfather fell ill. My mom, exactly what we're talking about. My mom came back to their side because her father was ill. They repaired as much as they could on his deathbed, and then he passed. And then my grandmother was this lonely, old woman who now was alone. And so my brother and my sister and I kind of came back in her life, to the point that my sister was the one who took care of her. And my grandmother, towards the last 6 or 7 years, really developed quite a bit of dementia. Still able to participate and communicate and things like that, but she sort of recreated my whole childhood. Like all the things that she did and said, and how she was neglectful and mean, didn't happen. In fact, she was the one who took care of us and cared for us. And so it became very, very kind of complicated. I found in that situation, I felt that what I was doing represented me. It represented the type of soul I wanted to have. And so I got back into her life, and I would go visit, and I would hear her stories, which were made up. And I would, just say, yeah, Grandma, I hear you. And we would go to lunch and all that kind of stuff. And I felt that represented the type of person I wanted to be, not the type of person that she might have deserved. And in the end, she passed right before I left left Los Angeles, and moved to Atlanta, and I officiated her funeral. So that was, and I remember that sermon I gave because I had to say, our grandmother taught us the meaning of unconditional love. And I said that because she taught us that what it felt like to not get unconditional love. And so that's how we really knew the story of unconditional love, because we had a model of someone who actually gave it under many, many conditions. And so, but again, I was trying to live the life and the relationship that I wanted. And I hope I can expect for my own children, my own grandchildren. I wanted to model that. And so I did with my grandmother, and now I hope, God willing, my children will do it for me.
As a firsthand example, thank you, Rabbi Lawrence. Rabbi Sam, what if the estranged family member has dementia and can't understand what's going on?
I think there's something healing maybe about doing some sort of ritual, perhaps, with the family member as a way to kind of heal you and heal them. Um, right? Like obviously it's a very tragic, unique situation, and perhaps like doing some sort of grieving ritual could take place to kind of help the both the family member and the person with dementia sort of heal and move on and kind of say this is a new stage and a new phase of this person's life, right? As they're dealing with their dementia, they aren't the person that they were. And so how do we kind of put the past behind us and maybe do some sort of ritual of release or some sort of prayer or some sort of confession or vidui that enables us, let's say hypothetically, the grandmother is the one with dementia, I'm the grandchild, to help me kind of say goodbye in a way that's going to help me feel at peace. And also going back to the idea of kavod, respect the person who has dementia. So I just kind of, and it's not like directly answering your question, but I think as Jewish people, it's always helpful and meaningful to think of specific rituals that we can do to kind of help eliminate, alleviate some of the pain that we might be feeling in the situation that you have expressed.
So, what can people do now before a crisis to reduce confusion, conflict, or silence later? Now, I'm not sure whether this needs to be addressed, assuming that no contact order is in, or even not at this point, but could happen later. I think it's two different situations, but Rabbi Sam, if you want to address that.
So, what could we be doing now, like before the no contact situation actually occurs?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it keeps going back to what Rabbi Rosenthal said about like meeting with confronting these issues with someone who is professional and trained in these issues to help you navigate it so that you can't navigate it alone, right? You can't expect someone to apologize to you if they're not sorry, and you can't apologize to someone if you're not sorry. But how do you work with someone who is a professional in these areas to help you maybe create a solution that's as amicable and as peaceful and productive for both family members? And if no contact is the answer, then that is the answer. But how do you kind of work within a framework to prevent it and to set things up before it's too late?
Rabbi Lawrence?
Seek professional help. Seek professional help.
Same answer. Okay.
And also know that your rabbis are here if you want to process and share and talk. Like again, we're not professionals in that specific way, but we can be a container for the grief and the sadness that's existing.
Yeah, but please be careful about going to your rabbi and saying, will you
100%.
reach out to my parent or will you reach out to my child and tell them? That's a really terrible place to put your rabbi. And the answer is
And
no.
we won't do it.
Yeah,
So
the answer is no. But
right.
we're happy to listen to you. We're happy
Exactly.
to be there. But just be careful with the asks, because yeah.
You can't be the go-between, right?
Exactly. Don't put us in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So, does choosing not to reconcile always mean someone is being unforgiving? Rabbi Lawrence?
No. You can forgive somebody and just decide that and feel like you just can't be in a relationship with them. That happens. That being said, like these are serious. Like these are serious decisions to make, especially if they're going to be lifelong. There was somebody on the Oprah video. Hopefully, all the viewers get that link because it was powerful to watch. I was wildly disturbed as I watched the Oprah video. I had a lot of emotions throughout the whole thing, and there was someone who said something. It was one of the, I think it was a parent who said something, and it was like, it was to a younger person, like, just know that you're modeling. You're modeling for your own children that it's okay to cut off a family member. Again, there are plenty of examples of situations where that is warranted, physical, sexual abuse, those type of things. But I will say that a lot of the cases I find, that's not the situation. That's not the situation. A lot of cases that I find the situation is I just don't get along with them, or they say things and they bother me, or they hurt me, or they're very critical of me. And those are real things, and those are not nice things. And the parent, for instance, might have some blame in that, and might need to change their ways, and they might need therapy themselves to work through why they're so critical of their children and stuff like that. But whether that rises to a level of completely cutting somebody off, it models to people who are on a generation below you that that's an acceptable thing. So you just have to be careful. Make sure that this is really a cut offable, what we call in the biblical world a karet event, that you're cut off from your community. Make sure it's a real offense that is truly worthy of that. And again, that takes good professional care. Although unfortunately, be careful with the psychologist too. The psychologist sometimes will just agree with, want to support and agree their patient and whatever their patient is saying. And that's one of the things that seemed to bother me so much about the Oprah video. I was wondering if there was any psychologists who were pushing against their clients and saying, you need to look at this differently. You should look at this differently. And, why don't you give someone the benefit of the doubt? Why don't you, so on and so forth.
That Oprah clip and the whole thing is on YouTube. So viewers can go to their YouTube channel and access Oprah No Contact, and it'll come right up.
Yeah. And in that, I just related to your question, I think there was a good quote in that Oprah segment that was related to what you just asked, in which it says that forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past can be different. It's not about the other person. It's about you accepting finally the relationship is what it is. Give up the hope that it's anything other than what it is and accept the reality of it. So you can meet her where this person is or not meet them at all. But kind of that is what forgiveness is, giving up the hope and just accepting them.
Okay, here's a question from the audience. As a parent, how can I address the estrangement with my child if they will not allow me to communicate with them? Rabbi Sam?
So if you can't communicate with them, then you have to figure out how to address it internally, and work with someone who can help you make peace with it for whatever it is. And also, I mean, I think that letter writing is an approach that's often recommended and suggested because they can do with it what they choose to, right? Like if you want to write your thoughts in a letter or an email and share it with that person, just so that you feel that your thoughts have been expressed, I think that's a productive way to share it. And then that enables the child to do whatever it is that they feel appropriate with that letter.
Rabbi Laurence?
I think what Rabbi Sam said is great. The letter writing sounds definitely interesting. You do have to be prepared for receiving a return, to non-deliverable return. I find that really working on yourself and coming to terms, again, using a professional to help you manage, and all the different tools we might have, whether it's journaling, whether it's beautiful Jewish rituals that you might go through, meditation, things like that. What I would encourage people to do is to kind of set some spaces for reconnection if they can happen. I don't want to create false hope, but keep those situations, keep the door open, right? Just because someone's been estranged for you for a long time, don't count those points against them when and if they do try to return. And be open and be willing to have that connection, and you could just kind of put it out there, right? You can make sure that other family members know that whenever the so and so comes back or is interested in having a relationship with me, I'm here, I'm interested. But you do need to do your own internal work, because the last thing you want to do is have them come back in your life and then you just pick up right where you left off. And if that's filled with anger and resentment, what have you accomplished? You've done nothing.
So what role can spiritual practices, customs, prayers, letters, witness bearing play when direct reconciliation is not possible?
I mean, I think it's the best possible way to heal, right? They're very powerful tools of healing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Using mikvah is an incredible, powerful one that I don't think it's used enough in progressive communities.
Nice.
The use of the mikvah, we have an incredible mikvah here at Macomb, up at on Mount Vernon Road at B'nai Torah Synagogue. It's open to everybody. So that's a great ritual. There's all types of other things you could do. Rabbi Sam brought up morning, different kind of morning rituals that you might want to go to. And look, we believe in mechayem metim, like the bringing life to the dead. So if the relationship, comes back and is able to heal, then good for you. You got a second chance at these things. But those might help you connect. There's some beautiful Shabbat lighting rituals that could be used. I'm thinking about like having a third candle rather than just two candles. That might be healing. But you also have to, do periodic check-ins. If lighting a third Shabbat candle rather than just the two is causing you to cry every Friday night as you do that, then we'll maybe need to think about something a little bit different, and have some other way of being of ritualizing it.
So if no emotional resolution is available, how can the clergy help with practical decisions that still need to be made, like service arrangements, probate court, estate planning, things like that?
I mean, service arrangements is our forte, our specialty. And we can absolutely do that in terms of probate court and all the other stuff you mentioned. I mean, that's for a lawyer. Service is our thing, and we could help be creative and work collaboratively to create an environment and situation that feels appropriate.
Yeah. And I think this is a really nice place where tradition falls in, which I really love, right? The tradition says so. We're going to bury this way because the tradition says so, right? And that's why we're going to do it. And we're going to sit this night of Shiva because the tradition says so. I know that we always, we have lots of flexibilities. We've all seen every community do all different types of things. But when you're in those type of situations, it is a gift to you to be able to say, this is what the tradition requires of me, so this is what we're going to do. Because I find that when you start to get into, what feels good to me, well, with other family members, you're going to find that what feels good to you is very different from what feels good to them, and you're going to find yourself in a difficult space. Parents could be very helpful by writing out exactly their wishes. I find that to be really, really great. A gift that parents could give, especially when there are siblings that don't talk to each other, to write out that this is what I want. I want to be buried like this. I want this on my gravestone. I want this many nights of Shiva. I want the Shiva located here. Like, be very exact. And, a place like Dressler's could be very, they could record all that information. Now, whether the kids will follow it is a different question, but at least you empower them to be able to say, this was mom or dad's wishes. So
how should a family approach situations where there's one black sheep relative estranged from everyone, but a crisis forces decisions about care, burial, or communication? Back to that sibling thing, but
say the question again.
How should a family approach situations where one black sheep relative is estranged from everyone, but a crisis forces decisions about care, burial, or communication? Either.
No.
Go for it, Lawrence.
I was about to say that to you, Rabbi Sam. Yeah, I mean, what I don't understand really is like if this is a black sheep relative, like they're not talking to anybody. I'm not sure how they would be communicated with in the first place about that situation. I'm assuming what you're saying is that it feels that the situation has risen to a level where you need to reach out to that family member and let them know. I think this is actually a space that a rabbi could be helpful for. I have had situations, I've actually had in the opposite, where people have said, you don't need to call this family member. And I have said, oh, well, now that you said that, I actually have to call this family member. So I have no qualms about if there's a family member that's been estranged. Like I will call and say, I'm officiating your mother's burial, and I met with the family. They told me their stories. I wanted to hear yours. And if you have something you want to share with me, and if I could be there to help you heal, because they have, look, they're gonna have to mourn too. They're gonna have to mourn too. And so, and as someone in the community, especially someone who's buried their parent, you have a ongoing responsibility, I believe, ongoing responsibility as that person who did that burial to be there for those family members and to a degree, and to, the processing that they need. Um, we should be here for them. Again, to a limit, but to help them, through the grieving process as best we can. And that black sheep family member will still grieve. They'll just grieve differently.
Yeah.
So,
All right, a final question. What guidance could you offer a person who does not want reconciliation, but whose death may be near? So this is someone who's dying that just is cut off from the family and doesn't want it fixed, but will be grieving their own death, I guess. So what can you offer them?
Well, I mean, if they don't want anything to change, then I guess that's what it is, right?
Right.
so my contact or our contact is with the person who is
Person
dying,
is dying.
and
Yes.
they have said, "Do not contact my children. I don't want."
Right.
Then you respect that.
Yeah, you respect that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And those situations happen, it's
Our
like,
obligation is to our congregant as well, right? Like we don't have an obligation to their children in Los Angeles or Denver,
Yeah.
Their rabbi has an obligation to them.
Okay. So I want to thank our two rabbis and tell you that there's been a drawing while we were here, while we were all chatting, and we have two lucky winners who are going to get to have lunch with Rabbi Sam and with Rabbi Lawrence. And the first winner is Barbara Kimmel, and she will be able to have lunch with Rabbi Sam. And
Ooh, yay.
and our second winner is Diana Lerner, and she will have lunch with Rabbi Lawrence. And we will contact you in terms of connecting with the rabbis, Barbara and Diana. And we at Weinstein Hospice will reach out. Actually, Danica will reach out to you. So if there's not any further questions, I think I can honor the rabbi's commitment to go on with their day, with their other meetings and meeting with other congregants and solving lots of issues for them. And I can tell you that our next webinar is going to be on May 6th. It's about exercise strategies to help you feel young and keep your balance. And if you have further questions about this topic of no contact, feel free to email us at or go to our website at www.weinsteinhospice.org or call the number on your screen, and we can put you in touch with either rabbi that you want to be speaking to. So thank you very much for your time today, and we appreciate it. Thank you, rabbis.
Thank you
Thank you
so
all.
much for including us and inviting us, and hopefully you all took something meaningful away from the conversation.
Yes, hope so. Take care, everybody.
All right, thank you.